Thank you, Brandon. Good evening, everybody. Greetings from Saratoga Springs, New York, where the horses are running, but without spectators. So it's kind of different. We've been coming up here 40 years and grew accustomed to seeing horses at the Saratoga Racecourse, but not this year for obvious reasons. We're going to be talking this evening about the Hojack Line, and I'll talk a little bit about what the Hojack Line is, what it's not. But before I do that, let me just say a few words of acknowledgement. Brandon Fess put this program together, and I appreciate that very much. Dave Lent and Lois Lent passed the word out to Charlotte High School classmates, and I appreciate that as well. Ken Wingate, Joan Wingate, Bob Mellick, Marie Poynan all answered many questions that I had concerning the Hojack Line, and Claude Bragdon and many buildings that he designed in New York Central Station in downtown Rochester. Jennifer Zipper first acquainted me with the Zoom process and back in Virginia, but here in Saratoga Springs, I've turned to Miss Freya Howarth, who's my chief Zoom advisor to my right here. Thank you, Freya, and thank you to all. And lastly, to my dear wife of 60 years, who has given me the support necessary to do these books and articles about the railroads in and around Rochester. So let's talk, let's get started. And I don't know, Brendan, did you say anything about the Q&A? We'll do that at the end, right? Okay. Right. Let's go to the next. The Hojack Line, as I've defined it, and many others have defined it, basically ran from, if I can get this arrow here to work, Oswego, New York, along Lake Ontario, through Charlotte, and westward towards Lewiston, Niagara Falls area, distance of about 150 miles. And the Hojack Line, you may ask, well, where did that name come from? Various people have different answers to that question. The one that I think is most believable is that through the years, the Hojack Line basically belonged to many railroads, and I'll list in a minute. And it so happened that early on, the workers on the railroad referred to each other when they wanted to hail somebody. They said, "Hey, Jack," you know, "Ho, Jack." And so that's the way I think that this developed. It's not my idea, but in the books that I've read, that seems to be the most believable. Hojack Line started off in the early 1870s. It belonged to the Lake Ontario Shore Railroad. It didn't last very long under that umbrella. The Rome, Watertown, and Ogdensburg Railroad, which I will refer to as RW&O because it's a fairly lengthy railroad name, bought them because the Lake Ontario Shore Railroad went bankrupt. They bought that railroad in 1876. New York Central bought the RW&O in 1891 because the RW&O went bankrupt. And I'll give you some information as to why it was very difficult for these railroads to build along Lake Ontario. New York Central went bankrupt in 1968, joined forces with the Pennsylvania Railroad and became the Penn Central Railroad. And in 1971, after the Penn Central went bankrupt, the Conrail government-sponsored company or railroad bought them out. And they lasted until 1999 when CSX basically Conrail went private, and CSX and the Southern Railroad bought them out and shared the Conrail assets. But in the Rochester area, it's all CSX today. Let's talk a little bit about, I don't have time really to go into all the, let me go back one. I don't have time to go through all the towns and villages, but needless to say, Oswego County, and after Oswego County, we went into Wayne County, Wayne into Monroe County, Monroe into Orleans County, and then into Niagara County. So there are about 5, and if I include Cayuga County, which was just a short distance for the Hojack Line, there are 6 counties that this Hojack Line went through. And I'm going to just touch on Monroe County, just so that you get a feel for the value of that the Hojack Line played during its time serving the farming community, and then also bringing coal to the various power plants in Rochester that serve the many companies there. So that's kind of a brief overview, but let's go, let's talk about, this is the station that was built around 1900 in Webster. Webster was a unique community because it specialized in dried fruit. Took the fruit that basically grew along the lake, and there were many types, dried it and sent it on all over the country. This is a photograph in Webster, and that Sioux line that you see right here is a railroad. Sioux line is a railroad in the Midwest, and they were shipping all over. The dried fruit went all over the country from Webster, New York. One of the problems that these railroads had that owned the Hojack Line was, for example, going across Arundecoit Bay. This is Arundecoit Bay here, and over here is Lake Ontario, and they had to engineer and construct a way for the railroad to get over and around Arundecoit Bay, which existed between, the line existed between the bay and Lake Ontario. And needless to say, it was very costly. It was costly for the Lake Ontario Shore Railroad. It was costly for the RW&O, and it wasn't until New York Central came along with many more assets that things got under control. This is another costly adventure that they had, crossing the Genesee River. This is the Swing Bridge, no longer there, but it started out the Lake Ontario Shore Railroad and the RW&O built wooden bridges to cross the river, manually operated. It wasn't until the New York Central came along and built this steel girded bridge in 1905. Some of you may recall back in 1947, I certainly recall it, when moving coal cars around, the engineer missed the red signal where he was supposed to stop. He didn't stop. The bridge was open and went right into the Genesee River. So that's something that a lot of people don't forget. So, okay, so crossing the Genesee, we're into now Monroe County. This is really known as the fruit belt. The Lake Ontario shoreline and the Lake Ontario plain was very, very fertile as far as growing many types of fruit. This is the Smithfield uh, company in Hilton, processing the apples that were collected and shipping them out by rail throughout the state of New York and probably the eastern states as well. This is an aerial view of the next town over, Hamlin, and the Duffy Mott food processing plant, which is located right there. And there's the Hojack Line. And they, I think, came to Hamlin somewhere around 1915, maybe a little bit later. But in 1978, things came to an end, and they closed down and moved their plant elsewhere. And what you see today in Hilton is a tribute to what that fruit belt did for not only Hilton but also Hamlin and other communities along Lake Ontario. The last train out when Duffy Mott went out of business was 1978. And I always like to show this because it shows the last train, and not a particularly long train, but this mile marker here in Hilton is the P stands for Pulaski. So it's 104 miles from Pulaski. And if could we bring up the second chart, I think.
Back?
Yeah, back. Okay, this one right here. So here's right in here is Hilton and Hamlin. Here's Pulaski right here. And the reason that Pulaski is shown because that was the RW&O's link to Syracuse, to Watertown, and Ogdensburg is up here. And it also linked to the New York Central Main Line down here in Rome, in the Rome-Utica area. So that's why that milepost was there. Anyway, let me come back here. This is the last train out. And if you go into Hilton today, you see that same mile marker, a milepost marker right there. And I don't know the name of this roadway here. Perhaps that's Route 18, but I'm not sure. Maybe 104, but I don't think it's 104. I think it's Route 18. Okay. So the Hojack Line for the fruit belt communities was a lifeline. And when Duffy Mott left and the fruit began to be trucked away, that was the end of the Hojack Line as far as that part of Monroe County is concerned. Okay, now the Hojack Line was also a lifeline for Rochester. Around 1890, electricity became very dominant. And this is a photograph of basically around the time that streetcars that were powered by horses turned to electricity. And I don't remember the trolley being drawn by horses, but I certainly remember some of the trolleys that were electrified in the city of Rochester before they turned to buses. So this is around 1890. Electricity being utilized not only for trolleys, but for the various companies that started to form. Eastman Kodak, around 1890, was incorporated. Bausch and Lomb about the time. Ritter Dental, Gleason Works, and then there was a car company, Cunningham Car Company, that turned from carriages to executive cars about the same time. Taylor Instrument was another famous company that got a start in Rochester. General Railway Signal, another one about that time. Clothing manufacturing was a big employment for the Rochester area, and Fashion Park, Hickey Freeman, and you still see Hickey Freeman clothes today. And also, let me come back to the high-tech company Haloid got its start when it turned to Haloid Xerox and then Xerox company. So that was a big time period for the city of Rochester. It grew exponentially at that time, and many demands were placed on electricity. So let's go quickly through them. The Bausch and Lomb, which I covered, Ritter Dental, this is Gleason Works, then the Cunningham Car Company, all fairly large factories. The only power at that time was hydroelectric power. Couldn't meet the demands of a growing Rochester. And into the 20th century, it turned to coal-fired steam generating electricity plants. The first one out was the BB plant. And in the background here, you see the Kodak Tower, but the BB plant near State Street, downtown Rochester, generated about 80 megawatts of power, which was sufficient to, at that time, to get things going. And it wasn't until 1948 when the Russell Station power plant, also coal-fired, came online. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But how to get coal to the BB plant. Let's go. Okay. Key to getting coal to the BB plant was the swing bridge that we talked about to come from Charlotte. The coal came down to Charlotte from the New York Central Main Line, or the B&O at the time, Baltimore and Ohio, and it turned over to, whether it was, this bridge belonged to the New York Central. So 1899 or thereabouts, the BB plant came online. So basically it was the New York Central that brought coal from Charlotte over the Genesee River on the swing bridge. And here's a Penn Central coal train making the trip over the river to Windsor Beach in Arundecoit. At Arundecoit, there was the interchange between the Hojack Line and the State Street branch that the RW&O built when it thought it could compete with the New York Central and built a line from the RW&O line along the lake, the Hojack Line, to downtown Rochester. So we're into Arundecoit, and we are going now from turning east. We're going to start to go south along the Genesee River. So basically, we're here in Charlotte, right here, over the Genesee River. There's Windsor Beach right here. And now we start south. Whoops. Start south, a little bit west, but now basically south along the Genesee River and coming down into the city of Rochester and across the Genesee River again, a very circuitous route, to say the least. Probably one of the most circuitous branch lines that I have seen in a long time. But that's the way they had to bring coal to the BB plant. This is a close-up of where the BB plant was, right here. There's, trying to find State Street here, it's here someplace. Here it is right here. And here's the New York Central main line. Very curiously, the New York Central, Commodore Vanderbilt's line, and the RW&O line, or the State Street branch, never interchanged. Something that probably was very detrimental to the history of this line once the BB plant shut down. Okay, so let's go back and review. This is across St. Paul Boulevard out of Windsor Beach, across St. Paul Boulevard. This bridge is down now, but I remember it very well. Now we're coming from St. Paul Boulevard to Thomas Avenue. There's Thomas Avenue, and I know people that this along this line here as the train came down. Whoops. Okay, thank you. As the train came down, the tracks were not in that good a condition. And what happened was the hopper cars would wobble. They were fully loaded with coal and they would spill coal along the tracks. And after the train left, people that lived along the tracks would pick the coal up and use it for heating, for cooking. It was interesting that they had that source of coal. But when Conrail came along, and we'll see in a minute, when the BB plant shut down, the rails were taken up, and that's as shown here in this photograph. Okay, so now we're south up to St. Paul Boulevard, still in the Runnicott, right on the borderline with the city of Rochester. The State Street branch crosses St. Paul Boulevard, right by the Seneca Park Zoo, which I still think exists. There's the bus that replaced the trolleys that we talked about earlier. And now we're in the city. This is Avenue A. Here's a mile marker, 9 miles from Windsor Beach, right through the center of the city. Okay, around Smith Street, again, over the Genesee River on this what's called the RW&O Bridge. So we've crossed the Genesee River twice now. And now into the BB station yards. There's the Kodak Tower in the background. There's a transfer station right there. The coal cars would come in, unload, and the coal would be conveyor belted to the BB plant. Then the empties would return the same route back to Charlotte over the swing bridge and into the Charlotte yards. Around 1994, the rail line had a lot of competition from the trucks that would carry coal to the transfer station. And it wasn't too much longer that the transfer station went silent when the BB station was shut down, I think around 1998, somewhere in there. And when that happened, Swing Bridge was no longer needed. and the traffic was non-existent on the swing bridge as from Charlotte across the Genesee River. And a very long legal battle took place between preservationists and the CSX Railroad. The Coast Guard got involved. And around 2013, some 12 years after the line was shut down, the court ruled that the swing bridge was no longer needed and should be taken down. It was a danger to river traffic. And this is the result. Okay, there's the swing bridge again. And the reason I showed that, just to review, across the Genesee River into the town of Arundecoit and then south along the river to the BB station. Let's talk about the Russell Station now. And this, you have to see here at Charlotte, there was an intersection from the Hojack Line, which is right here, to the Charlotte branch, right here. You could either go west off the Charlotte branch and intersect the Hojack Line, or you could go east across and intersect the Hojack Line right here and on into Arundecoit. This is important to note that this curve here played havoc with a lot of the trains. They had to slow down and make this curve heading west towards the Russell Station. Let me just grab a swallow of water here. Okay, there's the Russell Station, 1948. A little bit west of Charlotte in the town of Greece. And the amount of power that this coal-fired plant generated was about 3 times what the BB plant generated. So we're talking 1948, 1950. At that time, Rochester, when I was just entering high school around that time, had a population of around 350,000 people, second only to Buffalo and New York City. It was a very, very prosperous time for the city of Rochester with Eastman Kodak and all the companies that I mentioned before, and they needed more power, and they built this RG&E plant. And they called it the Russell Station. Okay, how did they get coal to the Russell Station? Here's the New York Central Main Line right here. The Charlotte branch, known also as the Charlotte Runner, came north. And this line is still in existence, by the way. Here's Kodak Park for reference, and Charlotte is right down here, and you see the line going west there. This Kodak Park also had a coal-fired plant internal to their facility at Kodak Park. And I think they have since shut that down, and I would say that probably it's either natural gas generated, or maybe they're getting nuclear power. I'm not sure, but no more coal here either. But here's the Rochester. This is the Rochester Runner, or the Charlotte branch, and here this is the former Baltimore and Ohio line, the Rochester Southern line. Both carried coal to the Kodak Park, which had their own railroad, by the way, which I think they've since have subcontracted that out. But anyway, just south, or I'm sorry, north of Kodak Park was the Boxart Street and the Right now it's the International Paper Company, I think, but they also was also known as the Box Factory. But CSX still runs a train through there and services that particular industrial park. So now we come down into the Shallot Yard. There's the terminal, the station that's still there. And the coal train is headed around this sharp curve right here. Well, it so happened that in around 2001, this train was going to set off some chemical cars at Kodak and probably some coal cars as well. But the braking was flawed. It started to run downhill. The engine couldn't stop it. It just gathered speed. And when it hit that curve, the tank car toppled over. This made national news. If you go on, you'll read about it. I don't think anybody was hurt. I don't think anybody was killed, but it sure made for a lot of smoke, and it was in the newspapers all over the country, as I said. Okay, on to Russell Station. Again, very busy yard, bringing coal in. Here's, this looks like a Penn Central, green caboose and Penn Central diesels. Now, after being shut down, I think, let me just see, check my notes here. Okay, Russell Station shut down in 2008. Demolition and remediation started around 2004. And Brendan Fest tells me that the structure may be gone, but the electric grid will be retained for possible use by RG&E. So if you go by there, you won't see the structure, but you'll see the grid. If you want to see a coal-fired power plant, you'll have to go out to Niagara County. This is Contigi power plant, which the last time I checked was a steam-generated coal-fired power plant for Niagara County. That ends the formal part of my presentation. If you are interested, there are 3 books that are available. The Hojack Line, containing all of the photos that you've seen here today. The Bragdon Station book, which is which was the subject of my talk yesterday. I'm sorry, not yesterday, last year, at the Rochester Public Library. And then in 2015, this book was published, Arcadia. These 2 are self-published. And this basically contains an overview, and I chose to detail the Bragdon Station and its architect, Claude Bragdon, in this book, and then delve into the Hojack Line in this book. They're available if you choose one book out of the 3. It would be $15. If you choose more than one book, you can have them each for $10. Just let me know. Here's my contact information, and I'd be glad to send it out to you. With that, let's go to Q&A, and I'll be glad to take any questions and do my best to answer them.
Feel free to to enter your questions either in the chat, or if you'd like to turn your mic on and ask them to the group.
I have a question. And is this the technology working?
Yes.
What did you say why it was that the spur up to BB Station chose to go along the east side of the river instead of the west, which would have avoided two bridges?
The BB station went along the east side of the river.
Right, but why did they build it like that? Why not just go up the west side of the river instead? What was the obstacle there?
Because when RWNO put that line in, that was the line that they put in, and it ended right at the BB station. If they went on the east side of the river, I'm sorry, the west side of the river,
right,
it was a distance from that line, the Charlotte branch, to the BB station. It didn't connect. If I can go back and show you, it was more convenient to go up the east side of the river and come right to the, let's see, going, okay, no, keep going. We'll keep going.
This is what they weren't showing before.
Blah, blah, blah.
Showing him the whole
Okay,
time.
right there. You can see there, John, here's BB station, the RWNO line that was put in, and it was a passenger station that they put in right on State Street. Was very convenient. The New York Central line didn't come off, or the Charlotte branch didn't come off the main line of the New York Central until down here around Ames Street, a short distance away from the BB plant. So it's a matter of convenience.
One more question, if I may. Do you know what the status is of the remediation of the BB plant site and its future?
Okay, it's been a while since I've resided in Rochester. I'll tell you what I know and then turn to maybe to Brandon Fess, who can give you a little bit more information, or anybody else. It's been shut down, remediated and demolished. I don't know what they're going to do with it. It sits right on the river. It's a beautiful site, but I do not know what future development plans the city of Rochester RG&E has for that building. I just don't know. Anybody else? Brandon, can you fill in there? Do you know the latest?
I can mention a couple things about it. RG&E has not been willing to turn the site over for other developers. I've not heard a good reason for this, but they're resistant to letting a private developer take it over. Part of the problem is that the more desirable part of the land, so BB Station itself, you may recall, sat on a cliff edge. And there was actually far more of the building below street level down to the river than there was above street level. The area is very narrow. It would be difficult to develop. What a developer would really want is the land just to the north along the river, which is much wider. However, that land, and I see Jason Haremza commenting here about the very contaminated area. BB Station was built on the site it was built at because the old Rochester Gas Company, before Rochester Gas and Electric, had one of their two coal gas producing plants on that site. And that wider area to the north of BB Station is where the actual coal gasification happened. That area is contaminated with a huge amount of coal tar. it would be a nightmare to try to remediate, and no one's willing to put the money into it. So at this point, anything I've heard about the redevelopment of that site is basically dead in the water.
Interesting. Yeah.
A comment here. Old coal gas sites are a nightmare. It's just nothing but volatile organics. A lot of them are pretty enduring. And I can see Mark Charles there nodding your head. My father's an industrial safety engineer, so I've grown up around this, and we've talked about it a lot. Yeah. It's a very difficult site.
Brendan, do you want to talk about our discussion about Russell Station and the grid that's going to be retained there by RG&E?
I can just mention it briefly that when Russell Station was taken down, and I know this because my father actually was offered the position of the safety supervisor for the demolition of Russell Station, that when they took Russell Station itself down, the buildings were completely eliminated, the land was remediated, but RG&E is retaining the entire site because of the electrical, or they would say switch yard. In other words, the grid and substation system that, I shouldn't say substation, but actual electrical station system that's on the site, which is still essential for meeting the electrical needs of all of Northwest Rochester and the town of Greece. So the Russell Station site, as much as it might be like, wow, it's this huge chunk of land, it's right by the lake, why is it not being redeveloped? They actually still need it. So there's really, from what I've heard, no chance the Russell Station site will be released for further development anytime soon.
Thank you, Brendan. Let's see. I need to ask you a question, Brendan. I've got some written questions here. Do you want me to go to those now, or do you want me to take more from live from the audience?
Well, why don't you answer Shiloh's question here first? Okay,
Shiloh's question. First of all, let me say hello to Shiloh. I know her very well. Her question is, thank you for your talk. Do you think the economics followed the train line development, or did the train line follow the economics? She's in the 4th grade, so that's quite a question. I think a little bit of both. But I would say that the train, because of the economics, and it goes back to John's question, the economics really led the story here, because it was because of that RWNO State Street Line branch that they called, that led it was convenient to bring the coal to the BB plant. I don't think it was the reverse, but it's a little bit of both, I guess. A train line following the economics, or economics following the train line. You know, it was convenient, and the railroads brought the coal from Charlotte over to Rundequoit, and I can remember very vividly in the middle of the night in the Windsor Beach yard, the coal cars being switched around and then brought up to on the State Street line. But it was indeed a circuitous route, like I said. Another one, nobody wants the site. Here, this is from Jason. To everyone, nobody wants the site, still very contaminated. The city won't touch it with a 10-foot pole, because then they assume the environmental library. I don't know, Jason, are you talking about Russell or BB Station? Not clear.
It was BB he was talking
about BB Station. Well, I guess that adds to your answer and explanation, Brandon. It's a little bit of both, I guess. Nobody wants to touch it because of the remediation, as well as the site, you know, the site location. You want to add to that, Brandon? No. Okay.
We've covered it.
Milepost, next question from Ken to everyone. Milepost P104, which is the milepost in Hilton. Distance, marking the distance from Hilton to Pulaski is an old Hojack line in Hilton. The Upton Street Cold Storage and the Heinz vinegar plant still exist in Hilton. So that's kind of interesting that, you know, you can still see remnants of the Hojack line and some of the companies that depended on the Hojack line for raw materials and for the products to be shipped out. I would also say that if you go down in Bob's, a famous fast food restaurant in Seabreeze, and if you look right across the road, you'll be able to see the embankment of the Hojack line, and I think it's Marge's Bar and Grill that is in business right across from Don and Bob's. And if you go a little bit west of that location into Durand Eastman Park, it's now I think a running path, and there's also a running path in Webster. So they're making good use of these road beds, but you can still see them and kind of use your imagination to see the way life was. Let's see, from Mark, Charles, to everyone, oil gas sites are very costly to remediate. Oh, I'm sorry, old coal gas sites are very costly to remediate. No question, no question. What else? You want me to type the question over?
No,
Oh,
those
okay.
are just.
Anything else? Let's see. I have one question, Ralph Christofferson. Yeah,
Pardon?
ask to unmute. She wants to be unmuted, I guess.
No, that was just the cursor
No.
going over it. Hunter has a question.
Hunter has a question. Where's Hunter?
Here.
From Hunter. Thank you for your talk. Do you think that they will make your book into a movie? And will you play? I know Hunter very well as well. To be honest, it would be fun, but I'm not holding my breath. I don't think it's going to happen. But with COVID, you never know.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else?
There was the question just above that about other customers along the line.
Where? From Mark Charles, everyone. Aside from RG&E, Beebe, and Russell plants, what railroad customers were active into the 1950s and 60s? Certainly Duffy Mott. There were a lot of storage, coal, fruit storage plants. Excuse me.
Hilton Cold Storage.
Cold storage, right? Cold storage. Webster was a big. Of course, that was a little bit later.
Xerox.
I would say read the book. I think Mark, you hit on a good point. There was a shortage of basic manufacturing along the Hojack line. It was basically a fruit belt line, and the manufacturing plants were few and far between. And I think once trucking got started after World War II in the early 1950s. A lot of the facilities along the Hojack Line turned to trucks for their transportation, and so it was not possible for the railroads to make money as they did shipping the fruit out during I would say the 1920s was the peak year and into the 1930s. But once you hit the 50s and 60s, a different ballgame. And once Conrail got into the act, they were looking to save money. And so there was they started to basically demolish the roadbed, take the tracks up, except for around Sodus, where you can still find a short line. The Ontario Midland, OMID, did run from Webster into Sodus, and then connected, and I'm not sure what the connection was or is, to another short line, which then ran to the CSX main line. But for the most part, these lines are all gone. It's interesting to note that that Contiguous plant in Niagara County, CSX runs a coal train, or did run a coal train until a short period of time ago, from Lockport, using the former Hojack Line and up into Somerset, New York, where along the lakes. A Contiguous power plant is right on the lake in Niagara County. I've not been there. I've seen pictures of it, but I looked at the rail schematics of the rail line, and it's interesting that they use the Hojack Line, put it to good use, as well as the OMID short line around Webster that I just mentioned. Yes. I don't. Can you talk a bit about the old coal trail at Turning Point Park? Turning Point Park, I did not mention the shipments of coal to Canada. And I talked mostly, in fact, all about the shipments of coal to the power plants, because that's what affected the Rochester's industrialization. That really, I think without that, I don't think Rochester would have achieved the industrialization that it did achieve, and the population hitting 350,000 in 1950 without the coal-fired power plants of Beebe and Russell Station. But anyway, yes, the B&O, they all, and I think it was the B&O, the BR&P first, the Buffalo, Rochester, and Pittsburgh, brought coal down to the Lake Ontario, to Charlotte, and ran a line over to the Genesee River just south of Charlotte. And at that Turning Point Park, they had freighters that carried coal to Canada. And also, I think that, I hope you remember, I certainly remember the Ontario 1 and 2, the ferries that ran from Charlotte over to Canada. Excuse me. They would load coal cars on that in the back of of those ferries. I have a shot of a picture of that. That was kind of interesting. So you'd find automobiles, coal cars, and people on these ferry boats. And I remember distinctly seeing them go out between the piers at Charlotte almost every day. So that was that Turning Point Park. Turning Point Park is where all those the loading of the freighters and the ferries took place. And you go down to Turning Point Park now, and you can look at it, and you can see some of the structure, the wooden structure of the buildings are gone, but you still see the pilings in the river.
Bob Maggie's raised his hand. I'm not sure if you have a question.
Bob, do you have a question?
Yeah, hi, Richard. Hi, Richard. Great presentation, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I just wanted to, did you operate the Shallot yards when you were an engineer?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Did you ever operate in the Shallot yards when you were an engineer? On the whole
No, I was not a train engineer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was, no, I wish I were, I'll tell you that. I always wanted to be one, but I never did. The closest I came to that was my father took me to Goodman Street Yards. He knew some of the people there and put me on a switcher there back probably when I was about 12 years old, but I just watched. I never.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was
No,
mentioned you were a former engineer.
No.
Okay, well, I just want to share some of my experience. I used to live within a stone's throw of the Shallot yard, and when I was a kid in the 70s, and I used to watch all the trains in there switching, and every time I would hear the train coming down the Shallot runner with its whistle blowing, I'd get a hop on my bike and pedal up to the Lake Avenue Bridge so I can watch the trains switching in the yard there. I thought it was very, very interesting to watch, and what got me into rail fanning a lot. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting time. I think not much has been written about Shallot. It was a rail hub. I mean, you had, as you said, you had the coal, the trains coming down the runner, the Shallot runner, the Shallot branch.
Yes.
And you had the intersection with the Hojack Line going east over the bridge, or
yes,
west.
Yep, they used to have the Y down there.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I mean, and then of course those accidents were 1947, 2001. It was a very interesting place. I used to see, when I walked from, I lived in Arundecoit, and strangely enough, I attended Shallot High School in the city. Now, how do you get from Arundecoit to Shallot High School? You walk over the Stutson Street Bridge, right there, you walk. And I used to see it all the time, but I wish I had a camera with me.
Yep.
And it was always action, always action. Yeah. And I remember in Arundecoit, they in the early 1950s, they ran, I think it was called the Red Ball Express. It would come in probably from Oswego.
1984 of Jeopardy.
What?
I think David's iPad isn't on mute, so there's no.
Anyway, I remember that. I can distinctly remember the engine that New York Central used at that time. It was basically a 10-wheeler for those train fans. That not much of a powerful engine, but that's what they used. A 10-wheeler steam engine, and but the engine that went into the water was a much larger engine, and they used that engine to move the coal cars around.
Yep, I remember. Just to give an update on the Shallot Yard, they've recently ripped up all the siding track, and there's just one rail going down to Dewey Avenue now. That's it. So slowly but surely it's disappearing.
Yeah, I have a question for you. This Charlotte Runner is still services the Boxart Street industrial
Yep.
plants there?
Yes, it still services Boxar Street plant, but the trains don't go any further than that now because part of the Schlott Runner got washed away in a rainstorm a couple years ago, so that's pretty much abandoned from the box plant north.
I see. So there no trains come by the Charlotte station.
Nope,
They don't.
not
They don't.
probably not in 3 or 4 years. They haven't been down there.
Are there any cars stored on the old Russell Station, in the old Russell Station yard and the tracks there, or is
No,
that gone too?
They ripped all the tracks up. The spur that went from the Hojack Line into the yard is all gone.
Yeah. Sad, but that's the way. That's progress, I guess. But it's interesting to look back and see where these tracks went and try to imagine how life was. Anything else that?
Nope. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're very welcome. I guess that's it, Brandon. I don't see any. Do we have any other?
Do you have any last questions?
Well, I guess that's it. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
And then everybody, thank you for attending, and it was, and I appreciate the interaction. Good night. Be safe. Be well. Hey, Marie.